Hi, I'm Jamie, your host for season 2 of the Not Going to Uni podcast, where we talk all things emerging talent and alternative routes to university. In today's episode, we talk to Grace, a self-employed accountant. Hi, Grace. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Welcome to the NGTU podcast. Do you want to give our audience a brief introduction to yourself before we get into the episode?
Yes, so I was an accounting apprenticeship for 3 years, and then through that gave me the skills to open my own business.
Amazing. And how far are you into that journey currently?
It's about 4 months old, so it's very fresh, it's very new, but it is going surprisingly well at the moment.
That's amazing to hear. So I guess let's take a deeper dive then into what I guess has led you to where you are today. So do you want to give us a brief overview into your journey into the industry and just give us some context as to how you've ended up where you are?
I suffer really badly with dyslexia and dyspraxia, so I knew that going to university wasn't going to be the right route for me because taking notes, sitting in lecture theatres, writing essays is basically my worst nightmare. So I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do because the school I was at the time didn't have the resources to be able to offer me anything else. But my mum ran an apprenticeship in the NHS for nursing associates. And she said, have you thought about an apprenticeship? Because it's very hands-on, you're very practical. That's the way that I learn best. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a go because at that time, I think there was more of a stigma around apprenticeships that it was for dumb people and that you could only do it in like hairdressing or construction. I didn't really know that you could do it in literally everything. So I started my research and applied to a couple of companies, got through to assessment centres, got some offers, had to pick one which was quite scary. Decided to go for Mazars, which is where I chose to do my apprenticeship, who were absolutely lovely and gave me all of the software I could ever want on my laptop for my dyslexia and helped me do my extra time as well for higher education. So I honestly couldn't have asked for any better. And then at the end of the 3 years, I left and I started my company now, Hardy Accounting.
So why accounting then? Talk us through that journey.
I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but at A-level I did economics, history and politics, and I love numbers and all of that sort of stuff and incorporating like reality into it as well. So I was looking for tax apprenticeships because I thought very naively it would be very similar to economics. It's obviously not now, but that's all that I knew of. But all of them were filled, so I decided to do my accounting apprenticeship instead.
Amazing. So I guess going into being self-employed, I reckon your days look very, very different to what they would typically in your apprenticeship or your 9 to 5. So do you want to give our audience a bit of context as to, I guess, what it's like now to obviously be self-employed and essentially run your own business and what that looks like?
Yeah, so every day is completely different. No 2 days are the same, which I actually really, really enjoy. It's so nice being able to go, oh, Monday I'm doing that and Tuesday is something different. For me, roughly, I'll wake up, some people would say late, probably about 9:30, just because I am 21. So I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. and doing monk mode or anything because I would just be absolutely exhausted and I wouldn't be able to function. So I wake up basically when I wake up. I go through my emails, I eat, I go to the gym, I come back, I'll do a little bit of client work, I'll do some meetings, either at home or in central London. And then usually in the evening, I have an event of some sort. So either a client's got a pop-up shop somewhere or a networking event.
Amazing. So what's been your highlight from working in accounting so far, and I guess why accounting?
So for me, I really like helping people. I think educating people is so important. And especially as an accountant, I have all of the knowledge and the resources to teach young people just about basic finance and basic tax, like when's the tax year, what's the tax bracket. And so for me, most of my clients don't really know anything about accounting and finance. They're all in their 20s, 30s. And they've started their businesses because they love what they do, not because they love filling in their self-assessment at the end of the year. So I'm there to answer all of their questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. which is really nice. And they feel like they can come to me and I'm not going to talk down to them. So it's just more about educating people. And I do that on all my social media platforms as well, because as I said, accountants have the knowledge. So it's kind of up to us to spread the awareness.
Have you had any challenges with kind of being, I guess, in that Gen Z category of being kind of self-employed and going out to potentially those older generations and I guess being the person that's going to answer all of their questions around accounts? Have you had any challenges that you've had to overcome with that, or?
Definitely a few. So on social media, you'll always get comments going, "You're so young. I wouldn't trust you with my accounts. I wouldn't trust you to do X, Y, Z. Why are you
Yeah.
doing this? This is the worst decision you'll ever make in your entire life." People, I think, that are just quite jealous that I'm able to leave my corporate job and do something a bit different. But definitely, either the older generation are really supportive. They're like, "Wow," because Gen Z is seen as quite lazy, I think, in older people's eyes. Which I think is a bit unfair. So they'll either go, "Wow, you're like one in a million. The rest of Gen Z is just sitting on their phones and you're out, you're doing things, and that's amazing." Which is a bit of a backhanded compliment because we're not all lazy. It's like 33% of Gen Z want to be self-employed, which is a huge percentage. And all the people I've met don't really sit around on their phones. They're very much go-getters and starting amazing, incredible businesses.
Yes, surrounding yourself with those like-minded people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, which helps a lot because I love my friends at university, but sometimes it's difficult for them to relate to what I'm doing, just because we're on different paths, and that's all right.
So how did, I guess, to take a even further rewind in and go back into when you were at school, and obviously you've mentioned a few challenges that you had at school and going into the workplace with those, but how did you kind of find that transition, both with obviously being entrepreneurial from a young age and having that mindset and maybe not being able to relate to people, but also kind of the challenges that you had in school that you were going to obviously bring into a workplace? Like, how did that transition go for you? And did you have any challenges that you had to overcome?
I think for me, my apprenticeship was so supportive with my learning difficulties that it was really, really nice because I'd struggled with it since primary school, secondary school, sixth form. Um, and in sixth form, I wasn't really in lessons. I was not a terribly great student. I would sit in a room and I'd email my teachers for work and I would teach myself just because that's how I learn best. Whereas going into an apprenticeship, you have to basically teach yourself. You go to college for a block and then it's up to you to learn afterwards and study really hard, which is the area that I sort of really thrive in. So for me, it was such a nice environment to be in.
Yeah, no, nice. Do you miss school or not?
No.
No.
No, I don't miss it because the education system is very set for one type of person. And anyone with ASD, dyslexia, ADHD, it's not, the school system isn't really built for people like that.
And do you see that changing over the kind of next decades?
I really hope it would, but there's such a focus on exams, which is just a memory test. It's nothing to do with your practical abilities. I really, really struggled with anxiety sitting exams as well. So all of my A-level mocks I walked out of just because my anxiety was through the roof. But I am actually quite clever. I do have quite a few brain cells, and so the school system wasn't really built for me. But in a workplace, learning and working, I really do quite well.
So anyone that's listening now that might have similar kind of difficulties that you had in school, what would kind of be your advice looking back on how to, obviously, if you dealt with them well and back then, or kind of if you were to recommend anything else going forward to anyone listening, what would you kind of recommend to get through those challenges in school and obviously transition those into the workplace, or obviously starting a business like yourself?
Yeah, for me personally, my school was really supportive. So when I said I just want to sit in a room and I just want to get my head down and work, they were like, "That's absolutely fine, you do that." And they were really supportive and were like, "Can we get you anything? Can we do anything else?" So it's definitely worth speaking to your school about it, but also finding other people that are in the same boat, because you won't be the only person with dyslexia or ADHD or ASD. There will be so many other people. And it's
Yeah.
nice to have those people to relate to, especially when revising for exams, because people revise in all sorts of different ways. Some people can just look at flashcards and it goes in. Personally, that didn't help whatsoever.
No.
But you have to find the right way for you and
Yeah.
know that school really isn't anything like the workplace. I think from the age of 19, I was training graduates out of university. And some of them had done accounting and finance, but you had to teach them from the bottom up anyway.
Yeah.
So it is completely different, and not everything will be like school.
Yeah, absolutely. So we usually ask our kind of our guests on here to talk about the social side of being an apprentice, sorry, because I think there's a big stigma around if you do an apprenticeship, you're not going to have any social time to see friends or go out or do any normal stuff, particularly with the balancing study stuff. But I guess as you're now self-employed, I guess that's now in your hands. So I guess, do you want to give us some kind of insight as to when you were an apprentice, how you dealt with that social side, and were you able to still have a social life? And now obviously transitioning to being self-employed, like how do you manage that to make sure you are getting the downtime that you deserve to see obviously family, friends, and etc.?
During my apprenticeship, I think at the beginning the social side was quite difficult in the office because there was only 3 of us that were 18 at the time. And after the first year, one of them left, so there was just 2 of us, but thankfully we got on very well. And so I got my social side by on the weekends going and visiting all my friends at university. So even though I've never been to university, I have gone out at a lot of universities, which was so nice. And basically every weekend, if I wasn't revising, I would go out and see my friends in Bournemouth or Manchester, etc., which was such a nice way to get it. And then there's also be like office socials, like there was like Wings Wednesday, I think, and like the Christmas party and bits and bobs like that, which was really nice. Being self-employed is obviously different because I have always been like this, but I put a lot of pressure on myself. And definitely at the beginning, my mindset was, well, if I don't work, the business isn't working because I'm the only person in it. So when I stop, it stops. And you can, by having that mentality, you can burn yourself out very, very easily. So my mum took me aside and she was like, Grace, you're working too hard. And I was like, I'm not, like, you just don't get it. Like, I'm self-employed.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, like, you actually need to take like the weekend off or like one day during the week to relax and see friends. So since then, I always really try and make a conscious effort not to work on the weekend. And if I do, say, work half a day on the weekend, I try to take half a day off somewhere else. So, for example, I worked yesterday for a couple of hours. So on Thursday, I'm driving up to Manchester for 3 hours, and that's not work. That's me time sitting in a car, singing along to Taylor Swift, probably, which is really nice. And then I'll go see friends on the weekend. So it's just making it work for you, because especially when there's loads of events and bits and bobs, the weekend might not be your day to take off. It might be a bit difficult depending on what you do, but it's important to have that downtime on another day of the week.
I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it? I think there's too much generalized advice out there for people like running their own businesses, and it's not a one size fits all approach. It's what works for you, your schedule, and how best you get stuff done.
Yeah, like a couple of my clients are fashion stores and clothing stores, so they're open on the weekend as well. So it's not like they stop working as well. So you just have to be mindful of that. But the best thing I probably did was bought myself a work phone. So all of my clients are on one phone and all my friends and family are on the other, which means that during the day I can put my personal phone aside and just look at my work phone. But especially in the evening, it's really nice to put my work phone down and switch off, put it upstairs and go down with my personal phone and text my friends and my family, which is really important to have that separation. Because when I did go slightly insane, because if I posted a TikTok that blew up, I would get emails coming through all on one phone, and I think, I know it's 1 a.m, but I should probably answer them, otherwise I'm going to forget. Like, I've got the reply in my head, so I might as well do it, which is a terrible, terrible mindset to have.
To quickly dive into that, around kind of socials and how that's kind of benefited you, maybe initially as an apprentice, but also now you're self-employed. Like, what's been the power of social media, and what's kind of been the highlights for you that's benefited yourself?
So during my apprenticeship, I didn't actually have a separate social media. I just had my personal social media where I just post myself traveling, which I really enjoy. And then as soon as I started a business, I was like, right, the power of social media is actually so important. It's a free marketing and advertising tool. I would be really stupid not to use it. But like for the first month, I refused to actually post my face on social media, which in retrospect is really stupid. And I would always tell everyone to put your face on social media. from my point of view, I thought, I'm young, I'm female, are people going to take me seriously? That was my doubt about it. And then as soon as I did it, everyone was like, oh my God, it's amazing that you're so young and you're doing this. Like, congratulations, good for you. Which I hadn't actually thought about, which was very naive and very just self-critical. But for me, my social media has meant that I'm able to make relationships with other business owners, other accountants, which has been really, really lovely. TikTok especially, one of my videos has nearly got 1 million views, which is crazy. It was about the new HMRC tax issue on the 1st of January. That was amazing. That meant that I got more inquiries about my business. I got more followers on social media, which honestly has just been incredible. So that's been very, very beneficial. So now on there, I just educate people about tax and finance in very basic terms.
Do you put any pressure on yourself to grow those social channels to a level of extent? I know there's so many kind of businesses or influence, whatever, that have their vision board and they want to get to like X amount of followers by X date. Like, do you have that pressure on yourself, or do you just kind of see how organically how it goes and go from there?
Yeah, for me, I have zero expectations just because I personally hate social media. I remember when I started my TikTok, maybe in October, November, and I had to get my sister down from university, my 18-year-old sister, and I went, I don't know how it works. Please, can you teach me? I don't know how to add a sound. I don't know how to make a slideshow. How do you change the color of the font? Like, I actually had no idea. So for me, it's just another amazing tool, and I try post as regularly as possible. But for me, I don't really have any goals. My goal is to just educate people. And if people want to follow me, then that's great.
Is that something you can see yourself potentially employing someone to do that for you? Is that a side of the business that you don't really have a particular interest to dive deeper into?
Not particularly. I really see its use and how beneficial it is. And I, in the future, want to do finance workshops for business owners, etc. And I can see how that's really important because the outreach on it is really great. However, I think there's definitely someone better suited to managing my social media than I am.
Yeah, 100%. So I know you've recently just become an NG2 ambassador. We always ask our guests to kind of talk about it, and appreciate you're quite new to the program. You haven't, I guess, used it to its full potential yet. But I guess, do you want to give an insight as to where you found the opportunity to become an ambassador, and also why you feel like it's going to be beneficial going forwards?
Yeah, so I just found it online because I was helping someone try to find an apprenticeship, and I came across the website, and then I saw you could be an ambassador. And I thought it was an amazing platform to help other young people, which is basically all that I want to do. So I thought it would be fabulous. And it's meant that I could go to What Career Live and answer parents, teachers, and students different questions on apprenticeships, which was amazing. I'm doing a talk at a school with Not Going to Uni. I'm doing a panel in February for National Apprenticeship Week. I did some content videos as well. So it's just been a really, really amazing platform to teach other young people about apprenticeships. And my aim is to be that person I didn't have when I was trying to look for apprenticeships, because I don't think necessarily all of the schools are equipped with all of the right information, because teachers mainly have all gone to university. So they're very, very good at writing personal statements. But the application process for an apprenticeship is so different to university. It's great to have so many apprentices being able and willing to help with that.
And doing, I guess, going into schools now, like, what's your advice to, I guess, students that are there, but also the teachers and kind of careers advisors around them, that I guess it's their core focus to help the students get to wherever they want to go? So what's kind of your advice to those people?
Yeah, so I've started doing talks at schools off my own back, of schools that I know that need a little bit of extra guidance. My advice is always just be yourself. So I always talk about my journey, and I didn't really have any relevant work experience. I worked as a waitress for 2 years, and that was it. But I was able to put those transferable skills into how I would be good in a corporate setting. And I always say it's about your personality, because you have to be really willing to learn, because you're basically chucked in the deep end from week one. You're given clients, and then you have to speak to the clients in person, and like, that's very terrifying. But if you go, I'm really good at communicating with clients and I work really hard and I'm really good at part of a team, but I'm also good at working like by myself, then they're way more likely to accept you than someone that's got no personality at all.
Yeah, 100%. I always find this question weird because you are still really young. But what advice would you give someone who's potentially either, I don't know, at GCSE level or potentially at A level, and they're looking forward either to exit school at 16 and do something else, or obviously go on to do A levels that are specific to their interests and follow that path? Like what advice would you get? I mean, you've given some advice around kind of dealing with those challenges in school, but what kind of advice would you give around kind of making sure that your eyes are as wide open as possible around the potential opportunities that are there? Like what advice would you give someone that's in that position now to get into whatever their focus is?
I would say definitely research, because research is so important. And if you don't research, you won't realize how many opportunities there are out there. And not to follow the crowd. Um, I don't know anyone from my schools that has gone and done an apprenticeship like I have. I could be wrong, but not that I'm aware of. And so if I had listened to everyone and just applied to university like all of my teachers were telling me to, then I wouldn't be in the position I am now at all. I would have just come out of university with probably 45k in debt, trying to find a grad scheme that's so unbelievably competitive because everyone comes out with the same degree and you're all in the same boat and you're all trying to fight for a graduate role. So yeah, don't move with the crowd if you don't want to, because I knew in my gut for me it wasn't right. And always research. There's so many websites out there now where you can look at so many different opportunities. I did a talk recently on Friday and a girl came up to me afterwards and went, I really want to do something creative. Where can I find it? And then on not going to uni, obviously you partner with the Eric app, which is just for creative. So I gave that to her and her mind was blown. She was like, wow, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. But because like teachers don't really know about that, for example, they didn't have the skills or knowledge to be able to give her that app so she could see all the creative opportunities out there.
That's really good. That's really great to hear. And I guess to end, looking forward towards your future in kind of being self-employed and in the industry, where do you kind of see your journey being self-employed go, I guess, in the next 5 years? What are your goals?
My goals are definitely to become a face of accounting for young people, because the stigma is that an accountant is an old white man in a suit. And I really, really, really want to get rid of that so badly. I think that definitely I know some people and clients that I know put me on a pedestal because they're like, wow, you know so much for an accountant. But at the end of the day, I couldn't do what they do. They do absolutely amazing things. Like one of them's a producer and I was like, I don't know the first thing about producing. He'll show me loads of little clips and stuff and I'm like, I can never do that. But it's so important to break down those barriers and for accounting and finance to be so accessible. Like, for example, on my website, I have free resources that people can download on a lot of very basic financial topics, just because I think that's right and it should be accessible. So definitely to be a spearhead for young people in accounting and finance.
And I'm going to end on one that you're probably going to be stumped at. What's one tool as a business owner that you'd recommend anyone using or potentially purchasing if it is like a paid subscription? Like, what's the tool that you can live without day to day?
Notion. So Notion is free, but you can create calendars on there, lists, you can track things. When I didn't have a CRM system, I made a CRM system in Notion and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. You can color code things. It's amazing.
Amazing. Thanks for that. Great. So that concludes today's episode. So Grace, thanks again for coming on to the NGTU podcast. We really enjoyed having you. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out the full series on your chosen streaming platform. You can also head over to the Not Going to Uni website to start your career search today.